Hey everybody, my name is Mark Borstein. I'm the CTO at Tremolo Security, and I am recording a quick demo of the final lab of the final chapter in Kubernetes and Enterprise Guide, third edition. It's hopefully going to be coming out here September, maybe. But I just thought this was really cool and I wanted to share it. So, why is this lab so cool? This lab is the building of a multi-tenant cluster. So we have three clusters. Let's start showing off what we got here. So we have three clusters. We have a control plane, we have a development cluster, and we have a production cluster. Our control plane is already running Vault, Harbor, ArgoCD, and GitLab, using OpenUnison to keep all those things together. So what's really cool about this is we're using identity to tie all these things together. So Vault, Harbor, GitLab, and Argo all have their own sense of what is an identity. And so we're tying all those things together in a way so that each tenant has its own boundaries, which I think is really cool. And then for our workloads, we're going to deploy everything into a development cluster and a production cluster. Our development cluster is going to just be running OpenUnison for authentication, same thing with our prod cluster. But what's really cool is that our tenants are actually going to get their own vClusters. And each vCluster is going to be integrated with authentication. So that means that as a member of that tenant, I can log into those individual vClusters as if they're just Kubernetes clusters that were provisioned for me. So that's really cool. We're also integrating everything together. So each cluster is going to end up having a pull secret that I can use to pull project or containers from Harbor. And then it's going to have projects inside of Argo. And then it's going to have an area inside of Vault. So it's all going to get integrated together. And when you're looking at Argo and GitLab, what's really cool is the way that Argo is going to communicate with these vClusters is not going to be using a static token. If you've been following me at all at Twitter, you've seen me say this, like almost every weekend for the last couple of months of, hey, I've got Argo talking using short-term tokens to these vClusters. So what's actually going to happen here is Argo is going to talk to OpenUnison using its own identity to get a short-lived token to talk to the vCluster. So there's no long-lived tokens being shared between all these clusters. Everything's running using a short-lived token. And so just to give you an idea of all the objects we need to create, and this is a graphic out of the book, in GitLab, we had to create the projects. In Argo, we had to create the roles and make sure everything maps up. We created application sets. I've got a bunch of blog posts on how we've done that. In Kubernetes, we've got to create different control plane objects. In each cluster, we're going to have to deploy vClusters, and each vCluster is going to have an OpenUnison and a dashboard. Vault's going to need objects to be created, and finally, Harbor is going to need a repository. Plus, we got to set up secrets so that we can pull from our tenant clusters and push from GitLab. So there's a lot of stuff that's going to get provisioned. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to log into our OpenUnison instance as a non-privileged user. So if you've ever used OpenUnison before, you might be familiar with our login portal. This is actually our namespace as a service. And you can see there's not a lot here, right? I don't have access to the control plane. I don't have access to dev. I don't have access to prod. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is generate my first application. Demo. My app demo. So I'm going to save that request. And just to show you that I've got an open request, see there's this report, I can go bug this dude named Matt Mosley. So I'm just going to log out as Matt, or log out as Jay Jackson, log in as M. Mosley. And I get to do a lot more stuff, right? I have access to Argo, and if we take a look at Argo, we can see that I've got my three clusters set up. If we look at the control plane, there's not really a lot there. There's just a namespace. But what's cool is these are actually using application sets. So if I go over to GitLab, I SSO in, I've got a Git repository that has all of these cluster definitions inside of this repo. And if I go back up here, I think actually the initial ones are all defined inside of cluster level objects. But the point is they're all integrated. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and sign out of here because I'm going to eventually need to sign in as me. Oops, I want to sign back in. And I want to actually get the password correct this time. If we take a look at Vault, you can log in via OIDC. Go ahead and log out. And then finally, Harbor, we can see that I'm signed in as Matt Mosley. So we got SSO signed up for all this stuff, which is really fun. All right, and we have this open approval, right? Well, even before we get to the open approval, we can see that we have I can get tokens for my control plane cluster, dashboard. I can get into dev. I can get into prod. Now, what I think is going to be really cool about this video is that I'm going to do everything without running kube control. No kube control at all, which I think is really cool because I think the kube control, if you're an ops and you're running kube control for anything, something's gone wrong. You want to have everything automated, everything automated through some kind of a trigger, but you don't want to be doing things manually. So I've got this open approval to create a new project, and we can see that this user is asking for a new project, where they want to deploy it, who they are. They don't have any access to anything else. So we're going to say for demo. So I'm going to approve the request, confirm the approval, and yeah, so this is going to take a while because of all those objects that we're creating, right? The thing is that we're not just creating those objects, we're doing it with GitOps, right? So OpenUnison, our workflow engine, isn't just calling the APIs directly, it's actually generating the Git, the manifests into Git, and then letting those manifests get synced in via ArgoCD. So there's a lot of synchronization here. And if this is actually gone short enough, let's log into GitLab here real quick and see if anything's been generated. It doesn't look like we've gotten there yet. Well, actually, I think if I go into the admin area, because I'm not technically... No. Okay. Well, this is going to take a little while, and then I'll show it off. So I will see you back in a bit. All right, everybody, we're back, and everything has deployed successfully. So if we poke around, let's take a look at Argo. And we'll see here, we've got these two new projects, MyAppDev and MyAppProd. Now, these are using the application set pattern. The really cool thing about this pattern is it makes it easy for us to be able to leverage Git to control GitOps, which, is kind of fun. So we generate an application set that generates an application inside of Argo based on a secret, and we'll show you that in a second. But what's really cool here is I look at dev, everything's synced in, and we've got stuff in here that drives our vCluster. So each vCluster is now integrated directly into ArgoCD. So I'm going to go ahead and log out of Argo and show you there's nothing up my sleeve here. Let's go into Vault. Oops. And we can see that each vCluster has an area in Vault. And there's a pull secret. And that pull secret, we can see, is a robot from Harbor. So now let's go ahead and get out of Vault. And let's go ahead and check out Harbor. So Harbor, uh, yeah, close Discord. So Harbor has our My App. There's nothing in it yet, right? So that's not super awesome. But let's go ahead and take care of that. Sign out of there. And let's go ahead and sign out of OpenUnison. So we're going to log back in as Jay Jackson. So this is the user that we logged in with to actually request the application be created. And now we've got some more stuff, right? So let's go ahead and check out Argo first. And what you'll see is different about Argo is the only applications we see are our dev and prod projects. We don't see all the other projects, which is really cool because that means that our identity boundary is being respected by Argo. So let's take a look at one of our projects, and it's the same thing, right? It's all the same information. Now let's go over to GitLab. And we'll log in with OpenUnison. And again, we don't see the original control plane module. We only see the modules for us. We got projects for us. So we got 3 projects here. We got My App Application. This is where we're going to eventually put our source code in a couple of minutes. We've got our ops applications for both dev and prod. So let's take a look at dev here for a second. Now, what's really cool is that all of the stuff that we saw in our in Argo is sitting here inside of Git. So like I said before, we're not just provisioning directly to APIs, we're actually pushing into a Git repository and then letting Argo sync everything. Let's go ahead and have some fun. The first thing we're going to do is we want to roll out our container that we're going to eventually create. So let's go ahead and create in both of our projects. We're in ops, so namespace is default. So let's create a folder called deployments. I know this is not at all a good practice, so don't practice what I preach here. And then I'm going to create a new file. And I'm just going to move this off screen to make my life a little bit easier. And we are going to go ahead and create our deployment, Python hello.yaml. Python hello.yaml. Right, and there's nothing really special here. We're integrating our pull secret that was created by external secret operator that was synced in from Vault. And our image is hard-coded right now. And that's not really super important. Where's image? There's image pull. Here we go. Image. So here's our image. This does not exist right now, right? We are going to take care of that via a pipeline. But we're going to go ahead and create this. And this is in our dev app. Let's go ahead and commit that change. And then we're going to do the same thing in production. Deployments. So we'll create a new directory. Nope, I'm in dev, that's why. I gotta go my ops prod. YAML names, nope. Namespaces default. Create new directory called deployments. And let's create a new file. We're going to put in the exact same thing. And we're going to call it Python hello.yaml. All right, so let's go ahead and commit those changes. Now, if we come over here to our applications, we'll see that we got a broken thing here, right? Like this is in the dev environment, and that is because we're trying to integrate a hard coded image that doesn't exist yet, right? And like, I'm going to go ahead and go to my dashboard. So I'm right now logged in as Jay Jackson into dev. Everything's broken, right? Because we have pullback, right? This stuff's not working. So let's make it work. So we're going to come back here to our project, and we're going to go into our application project. We're actually going to set up our application. So I'm going to go ahead and, again, do this in a way that is really not the right way to do this, but I'm going to do it that way anyway. So source, and then I'm going to go ahead and create these files manually because I am just a horrible, horrible person. So this is our Docker file. Now, the contents of the Docker file are not particularly interesting. It's just a Docker file. Go ahead and commit that. And then we're going to create our actual hello world. This is called hello world.py. Again, this is not really terribly interesting. This is just a silly little web service. And then we're going to need requirements. Let's go ahead and add that. All right, so we haven't actually done anything super interesting yet, right? Like we created we went ahead and just created our application. Now we want to build it. So we're using GitLab as our build system. So let's go ahead and create our build file. And our build system, our build file is pretty interesting, I think. So the first thing it does is it actually builds the container using Kaneko. Kaneko is a great project from Google. It doesn't require a Docker daemon. And it's going to create this Docker image. It's going to first generate a Docker configuration that has a secret in it that we can use to push images into Harbor. And we're going to have our image generated with a commit SHA, so that way we know each image is connected to a specific commit. Then our deployment is going to check out our dev repo using an SSH key that was provisioned by OpenUnison for us, patch it with the correct URL, and push it. And then we'll let Argo sync everything. So let's go ahead and push that in. And pretty quickly, if we come up to, I think it's build. Yep. We go to pipelines. We'll see that we have a new pipeline running with 2 jobs. So let's take a look at the build job. And this should run pretty quickly. GitLab provisions or runs jobs as containers. So it's just got to pull down the container and go ahead and run it. See, that was pretty quick. So now if we go back to our, build jobs. Yep, so it's already run. So we go to the deploy job, we can see that it went ahead and pushed everything. So now if we come back here to Argo, so where am I? I'm in dev, right? And we can see it just picked up the change and now it's running. So we've gone ahead and committed code that automatically updated our dev environment. Now, obviously in production environment, you don't have forks and things like that. But the point is we've got everything automated here. And if we come back over here, let's go ahead, and our session probably timed out. So let's log back in. We're all green, right? Like, look at that. No kube control. I think that's kind of cool. So now if we want to take this to the last step, this part is not very GitOpsy, or it's not very automated, right? So it'd be a good time to find a way to automate this. But if we come here, go to namespaces, default, deployments, we'll see that there was a history, right? Like we can see that GitLab CI/CD made this change where it changed our URL and our image, right? So let's go ahead and let's grab that new, image. And this would be a cool time to use, some kind of automation, but I'm a terrible human being, which anybody who knows me can really attest to. Namespaces, nope. Default, deployments, Python hello. And just to show you there's nothing up my sleeve, let's go over to prod. And we can see prod's broken, right? Same problem. It can't pull in. We've got a pull image issue. So I'm going to go ahead and edit this. Not going to get too fancy. Right, that looks good. Commit the change. Let's come back to Argo. And let's go to prod. And this should only take a moment. And let's cheat. There we go. So that's now kicking in. It's syncing everything in. But again, we're using short-lived tokens here. So ArgoCD does not have a permanent token, a service account token, that is capable of talking directly to these vClusters. So there's nothing to lose, right? Like these tokens are only good for a minute, which I think is kind of crazy. And of course it didn't work. Why didn't it work? Did I do the right thing? I must have broke something inside of the integration. But anyway, I'll figure it out in the lab. Thanks for joining, and hopefully the book will be out sometime in September. Have a great night.